Hey there, AJ here for the AJ channel, but we all know it as the Mighty Gluestick, your source of easy listening lore for the world's greatest role-playing game, hands down. In the Dungeons & Dragons cosmos, there are many worlds, many settings, many fantastic locations, and there is magic pervading it all. Dungeons & Dragons is not based on reality, clearly. It's an incredibly detailed and complex body of story and fable that has developed over the last 4 decades. Most of the stories that are acted out in games, played around tables and across the internet, are taking place in homebrewed settings, with elements picked and chosen from published sourcebooks, as well as unique settings, ideas that are created by dungeon masters to explore and create as the player characters also create their own stories on these new worlds. Many people greatly enjoy playing in the published settings, but creating their own events and histories, unique locations that only exist in their game sessions. Others play the settings as they are written, enjoying the shared experience of running characters through classic adventures and famous locations. All characters grow in experience, and the game has options for expanding the gameplay to increasingly epic stories and locations. Most who play the game from older editions will be familiar with the concept of building keeps and strongholds, with the high-level characters taking on the role of leadership and importance in the civilizations that inhabit the whole story and the world that the story is set in. Others will seek out or stumble across magical portals and magics that allow instantaneous travel from one plane of existence to another, traversing the astral sea, elemental planes and the celestial and infernal realms of supernatural folklore, the homes of the gods and the cosmic forces of evil. I've compared these sorts of adventures to Dungeons & Dragons Stargate. However, there is another option for greatly expanding the game, and as we start to explore more cosmic conflicts in 5th edition this year in the published sourcebooks, it's time to talk about Spelljammer. Spelljammer is space travel for Dungeons & Dragons, done in such a way as to preserve the fantastic element that is vital to the genre. Space in Dungeons & Dragons is not like our own universe. It operates with its own unique laws of physics that take the possibilities to a whole new level. So what happens when you leave the atmosphere of a planet in Dungeons & Dragons? Well, you enter what is called wild space, which is a lot like space as we know it, with a couple of very important major differences. The first is that gravity orientates itself on an object with its mass in a different way. For example, if I was standing on the deck of a ship, moving through wild space, the deck would feel like down to me. And if I then hopped over the side and moved to under the ship, I would plonk down onto the underside as if it were now the ground under my feet. Also, when one leaves the atmosphere of a planet, a bubble of air is trapped and pulled with the body, creating a temporary protective, life-sustaining shell of breathable air, and this bubble of air increases with the relative dimensions of whatever object leaves an atmosphere. So, an average human has a bubble of air that they can breathe for up to 20 minutes. A large vessel has a lot more air. There are calculations to work this out. You take the length of the keel or bottom of the object, front to back, and multiply it by how wide the object is, or its beam in nautical terms, divide this in half, and add the total hit points of the object. This adds up to the number of days a single person could breathe the air on this object before it goes foul. Obviously, the more people there are breathing it, the less time they can do so, which becomes an important consideration when working out the crew and living cargo of any wild space faring vessel. Of course, loading a vessel with lots of plants will refresh the air quite nicely, so no need to get bogged down in the math. It only becomes an issue when it adds urgency, drama and problem-solving danger in your story, or at least that's my gaming philosophy. For those who love the idea of vehicle combat, hit locations, hull points, cargo capacity, crew requirements, all the cool weapons that big vessels can cart around and blast, tear and pummel targets to pieces with, there is this, and there are lots more information that you can sink your teeth into this setting and the many campaign sourcebooks. There is a large variety of spelljamming vessels that ply the wild space, but wild space is just the beginning of the weirdness. You can pilot your ship through wild space using a special kind of engine, a drive. They come in a variety of shapes and forms. The method they use to generate thrust through wild space can be as creepy as draining the life force from victims inside some chambers. to as specific and complicated as the divine power that is released when dwarves are engaged in the act of creating manufactured items, the power that stems from the dwarven pantheon itself. Some drives take the form of simple forges that literally burn magic items, siphoning off magical energy. Most commonly, though, it is the trained and refined magical power of spellcasters who are seated in special locations, mentally and metaphysically in tune with the ship, like it were an extension of their own body. These special magical engines are called helms, and the act of using magical force to move through wild space is called spelljamming. Anyone who leaves the atmosphere of Toril will quickly realize that the star system is part of a large number of other inhabited worlds, and that Toril was, up until quite recently, the site of a lot of traffic to and fro, becoming much less frequent in the last few decades. Also, beyond these planets, there is an incredible artifact, a structure of truly divine proportions, so large it simply boggles the mind. A wall of stupendously strong, dark, opaque crystal, and on the other side of it, a swirling rainbow-hued ocean of some sort of gas, constantly in motion, fast in some places, slower in others. This is the Great Crystal Sphere. Each world, each different star system, each other prime material world setting resides inside its own crystal sphere. They are literally floating, often very, very slowly bobbing up and down and drifting through a vast zone filled with a gas called phlogiston. In later videos in the Spelljammer series, oh yes, there will be more, I will talk about the star systems of the different settings, the other planets in the Toril sphere, known as the realm space, and some of the other fantastic structures one can find in the cosmos. I'll also be going into more detail on alien cultures, factions, and species who travel the spheres. Phlogiston is not any sort of substance that we're used to in reality. It's mystical stuff. What we do know is that it doesn't behave like an air or a liquid exactly. That's erratic and highly flammable, but the combustion is strictly catalyst-based. Phlogiston cannot ignite without something for it to burn. It would not exist inside any crystal sphere. It can't, not ever. Because it exists outside and between the spheres, it is the basic, default matter of the D&D cosmos. At some point, either the gods or some greater overpowers created the enormous crystal structures to protect prime material worlds from the chaotic and raw flow of this primal stuff. It should be noted, by the way, that the crystal spheres do not create gravity like other objects, nor can they be breached aside from magical emanations such as Dimension Door. Also, planar shifting magic, which creates portals to other planes of existence, is extremely erratic anywhere close to a crystal sphere. The sphere's boundary wall is as far from the outermost orbiting planet or other significant mass that so it's sort of halfway again. So if you take the distance from the star to the most distant orbiting object, that distance again is how far away the sphere is, the crystal sphere is from that planet. So it's almost impossible to tell that it's actually curved. It's so large that the closest as soon as you get close to it, you just see this wall of crystal. You can't actually tell it's curved at all. Phlogiston is the means of propulsion beyond the crystal spheres. This space either keeps the crystal spheres from crashing into each other, either by thickening up or moving into extremely fast-flowing rivers, compressed but never actually solid. The effect these rainbow rivers have for the purpose of interstellar travel or intersphere travel is that the lower the ship sinks into the flow, the faster it goes, and this works with relative surface area as well, which is why Spelljammer vessels benefit from having sails or sail-like structures in this environment. Ship's helms and the skills of the pilot provide ships with a basic movement rate. This is translated into the speeds achievable within a normal atmosphere, the speed achievable in wild space within the crystal sphere, and the dazzling velocity a ship can attain within the flow of phlogiston, which is hundreds of thousands of miles per day. In future videos, or even hundreds of millions, In future videos, I'll talk about in more detail about the different cultures, the technologies, the advanced weapons and equipment you may come across, the races who ply the cosmic paths, the general layout of the better known spheres, and any specific questions you might have for me. Just put them in the comment section down below, and I'll be able to cover them as we learn more about Spelljammer together and kick this game into a whole new level. But for now, thank you for watching. Be sure to show your appreciation, and I'll be back again very soon with some more lore for you.